Okay, guys. We don't have much time for this panel, so we'll have time for several questions. If you have a question, raise your hand and we can ask our guys here. These are CEOs of startups that we invested in, and they already have enough experience to share. I'll try to keep the discussion as practical as possible. So if there is somebody who is interested in starting a business, he can get some practical advices. So here is Benson, Mislav, Milen, Tito, and Jason. And guys, would you share what are the advantages of using blockchain? Why did you decide to use it? Who would like to start?
Well, for us, I think it was pretty clear from the beginning that blockchain was the route we're going to take, primarily because we're tokenizing physical assets. And tokenizing physical assets in a database owned by a company somewhere, it's not a good solution. So basically, even the best companies are susceptible to cash flow issues, bankruptcies, data corruption, security breaches, whatever, you name it. So if you tokenize physical assets into such a system, you lose basically any semblance of trust that this will work in 30, 40, 50 years. So when we're funding a wind farm, for example, through AMPnet, you have to have a guarantee of sorts that it's going to be working in 30 years and that the tokenized assets are still going to represent legal rights to claim profits from this product. And the level of guarantees we could get from regular software was not even on the same level as with blockchain.
I guess for me, working in the emergency response sector, I saw like it's not, it has been tradition for a very long time. And there are aspects of it that are human controlled mostly. And so we saw an opportunity with blockchain that could close the gap. And so from the sphere of preventive mechanism to all the way ensuring quality is delivered, it made sense for us in that aspect. So I think these are main points why we feel blockchain could work for us.
Thank you. Guys, do you want to share?
Yeah. So I'll start a little bit earlier. I mean, blockchain is a whole new philosophy, and it changed the way that we transfer value. And when we have some new system about value transfer, we should have some finance around it. So we have this kind of lending, borrowing, exchanges, and all that things. And yeah, we decided that we should make an exchange. And in my opinion, for all kinds of exchanges, for cryptocurrencies, digitalized assets, and everything else, it's much more better to use decentralized systems because they are much more secure, much more transparent, they are more reliable. And basically, trading should be decentralized. We don't need any monopolies. It's not good for no one. So yeah, in our case, in trading, I think that blockchain is one of the best solutions for any kind of trading platforms.
So I guess I would say that as a company that's dealing with trust, we sell trust as a service, and our company predates our plans or intentions or use of blockchain. We were actually more originally an AI company. And I think what we realized was that the AI that we were building was really important for solving the technical problems around trust and like maybe the theory of trust that we believe in. But it wasn't so helpful for cracking the other major problem in trust, which is about the economics of trust on the internet right now, which are mostly driven by perverse incentives. So we wanted to realign the economic incentives around trust. Right now it's all around manipulation of trust or violation of trust. These are the things that create economic reward on the web. If I'm an Amazon seller, I can go and buy fake reviews and all of a sudden my product starts selling. That's a really perverse incentive that you benefit from violating trust on both sides. So by implementing a blockchain, we realized that we could actually change those incentives and get rid of the manipulation, but now encourage and provide a token economic incentive for the building of trust. And so we really came about it from the point of view of how do we actually tackle the human problem as well as the technical problem, and it was the right fit.
Guys, Milen, you want?
Can share as well.
So, yeah, our company is a service company, actually, and we're providing services for blockchain startups and consulting. But actually, we see that blockchain technology has great potential in some cases. As in the previous talk was mentioned, blockchain is not a solution for everything. But in lots of cases, there is no other viable solution if you want to bring more trust to your clients, users. So we saw that a few years ago, and that's why we focused our efforts in dealing with all of the things that blockchain provides and help users and clients with implementing their solutions on a blockchain.
I think one hot question is how you manage to get investors and how do you sustain your business until the blockchain is starting to pay off?
Sure, I can start. Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for us in terms of how we've gotten investors is just resilience and passion. Our entire team is pretty obsessed with what we do, and we're like cockroaches. You really can't kill us. You think you're rid of us, but no, you're not. We're coming back. And I think at the end of the day, these are probably the most important characteristics in a successful business of any type, blockchain, non-blockchain, agriculture, whatever you're talking about. But how much resilience and how much grit and how much passion do you have? And again, I think one of the really important things that many blockchain-enabled companies are overlooking is that the market is not there yet. That's where we all believe the market will be, and I think none of us would be here if we didn't believe that the market is going there, but it's not there yet. And I think part of the job of the people that are really passionate about making that future happen is to build easy ramps for everybody else. Hooks into the centralized economy that draw people by the nose to the decentralized economy through incentives, through better offerings, not through hype or promises or anything like this. But you can't just build something and expect everybody's going to leave all of their existing tools and services that they use. No, we have to build on-ramps for people, not just monetary on-ramps, but like user experience on-ramps.
So in a bit of a connection with this, I think a lot of people are overlooking I'd call them alternative, but they're actually classical funding models when it comes to their blockchain startups. And I really like the idea of blockchain just being a technology stack, not a solution for the problem you are solving. If you can clarify your problem into basic pain points and how you solve them, you don't even have to mention that you're using blockchain. So it could be just a beneficial side hustle that you're doing with your company. So you have a product which is solving this, but this one pain point out of 5 pain points is suitable for blockchain to solve it. And then you pitch it like that. So my company, we've never crowdfunded any investments. We already have 2 funds which are investing in us, Eternity being one of them. And it was all done basically, even pitching Eternity, we almost never mentioned blockchain. Like it was just, yeah, we're gonna use it, but the biggest part was the problem we're solving, which was, and so I think like pre-blockchain companies who wish to integrate blockchain into their infrastructure, they should just keep doing what they were doing. Don't change anything. Just because you're using a blockchain instead of a SQL database doesn't mean you have to change your entire approach to funding and to biz dev.
I agree on that, but not in 100%, because when you use blockchain, it brings a lot of value, but it brings also some technical disadvantages. It's slower, there are some problems, and I think that it depends on the case, but many times it is one of the core things in the whole idea and whole project. Because, you know, there are startups and they said, okay, we are building this and that, and we will add AI, and we will add blockchain, and we will add something else just because it's trendy. I don't think that it should be like that. And yeah, I believe that when you're doing a blockchain and when it is in the center of the whole idea and the whole application that you're doing, it's a little bit harder to find investors because they are not that familiar. There are some problems with the full decentralization or decentralized approach. But again, it's a niche market, and there are some pros and cons. The cons are that we don't have so much investors, and it's hard to make deals. But the other part, you can focus on some specific investors, because eternity-like funds, or for example, other blockchain funds, they are looking especially for blockchain-oriented projects. And yeah, the pros are that you can focus that funds and easily find your target investors, in my opinion.
I think I would agree with Mislav. We shouldn't just look at blockchain as an enabler. If the same way we look at technology as an enabler. If you focus so much on fronting the blockchain, trust me, somehow, somewhere, it gets into the company as well and gets into the heads of the people in the company. Look at blockchain as an enabler. It's going to help you to solve the solution. Take, I don't know, whatever service you're giving to the masses. Yeah, I think, and also on the side for investors, they shouldn't press so much on the blockchain being the aspect, rather the solution that you're providing as a startup. Because then you don't want to start in one way and then divert to the other, because you look less at the people you're serving and more at the technology you're building. It's meant for the end user.
Here you should have in mind that there are different contexts. In their case, the blockchain is somewhere in the back end. In his case, the blockchain is in the front end, so, because they're doing decentralized exchange, so it exists because of blockchain.
So yeah, that was I gonna comment when Tito was saying, like, it's completely different approach. But I think the issue I think you might be having, correct me if I'm wrong, the most is how do you define a business model which is understandable for the classical investors, because they want to see, you know, what's your recurring revenue, how do you price it, what's the per user cost acquisition, and you basically have a tokenized economy model, and their analysts aren't really fit to discuss it. They aren't trained into token economics incentive analysis, so that might be a tough bridge to cross.
A reminder to the audience, if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll ask our guys here at the stage. All right. How do you communicate to your users the advantages of your systems, and when they have to face some of the specific characteristics that are because of blockchain, how do you do that? Do you educate them what is blockchain, or you try to hide it as much as possible in order not to bother them with technicalities? What's your approach?
I guess, well, after a period of time, they will have to know what blockchain is. You can't hide it forever. But currently, we personally, in the emergency response sector, we push more of the benefits of what blockchain is going to bring on the platform. So you tell the rider about how quick you're going to reduce intervention, the distributed costs. You talk about assured quality, but you're not going to tell them we're going to build smart contracts, and then you lose them completely. You're not going to tell them we're organizing an incentive program where you behave well on the ecosystem and you get incentives in token. You're going to lose them. So I think communicate more of benefits. The blockchain will be behind, yeah? But after a period of time, they will start making sense. Why am I getting incentives in form of token? And maybe they'll want to spend the token. How do I turn this to fiat? So over time, yeah, the communication will come in. But currently, I'd say communicate benefits more. Yeah.
we are trying to do some educational tutorials. And in our opinion, with some content marketing and providing the right information, you can educate your users and make some loyal user base. And yeah, that's slow and you need organic growth. But yeah, we have tried with just saying the benefits and why it is good that we are using blockchain and all that stuff. But I don't think that for now it don't work. So yeah, we are trying to do some educational materials, and I think that it is useful for users and for us, and it's something good that will stay in time.
If I can add a bit more on this, we also try to educate our clients and users and customers, but in the end, you don't educate people for knowing SQL databases or stuff like this. If you try to hide the blockchain part, and if it works well without people needing to notice that there is something happening in the backend, maybe then we will not be focusing so much effort on educating people what blockchain is and how it works, but only, as he said, focusing on the benefits it provides. That was.
I think at this point we might need to switch the semantics a bit. That's what we did with our users. So it's not a focus on blockchain, but it's a focus on a feature of the blockchain. So for us, it's the fact that you have irrefutable evidence of tokenized assets on the blockchain and the ability to freely trade them. That's expressed in the way that you have to hold your private keys, your mnemonic phrase. You have to keep it. We never tell you it's blockchain. We just tell you, look, these 12 words, they control everything that you do. Don't lose them. You'll not be able to recover them. And we are just basically focusing right now on, so what we're doing, we're taking it a step further, which I think personally is like the evolution of blockchain. We are hiding the gas payments from users, so all transactions are basically gasless for them. We are hiding the fact that they are interacting with the blockchain, so we built a transaction relay, which their mobile applications are connecting to, which is relaying everything to the proper nodes. You know, so we've built this entire back-end infrastructure, which is allowing our users to basically know the fact, as long as I hold these 12 words secure, and I don't lose them, nobody steals them, I'm the owner of these assets legally forever. And so I think that's what we should focus, like semantics should be switched from we're using blockchain, but we're using this feature of the blockchain to help our users.
Yeah, our service is infrastructure that can be embedded and integrated into so many of the platforms and marketplaces that we're already all using in our daily life. And that's really how we communicate, again, focusing on the value proposition of get better trust online, earn money from building trust online. So we focus on that, and again, we can co-opt large numbers of users in through our B2B clients. And so you come with a B2B value proposition to a traditional sector company, you can add some value for their users, increase their bottom line, and you suddenly can get exposed to a massive user base. So we've partnered with a company in Tanzania, for instance, that has a network of 30 million farmers across the country doing peer-to-peer lending. And we probably could not have gotten that partnership or gotten to 30 million farmers in Tanzania ourselves, but now through a company that was already having a partnership to serve them, we can augment their service offering. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to pair decentralized technologies and decentralized companies with traditional actors to broaden that reach. Yeah.
We have a question here from Bill.
Blockchain often goes hand in hand with open source. What's your opinion about bringing open source into a business that has to make a profit?
There are no ideal solutions there, but our approach so far is that we open source everything, but we have a strict license. So it's basically you can read it, you can reverse engineer it for your private use, it's whatever. if you're making money with our product, you can't do it. So our protections so far have been legal, but we completely agree that if it's on blockchain, even just for security's sake, it should be open source. And beyond that, we really do believe in the open source movement, and that there's really no reason to close the source of your software. Generally, nobody's gonna steal it. Nobody's gonna go through the time and effort to dispute you on court who wrote the software. So just open source everything, don't worry about it. But as far as we're concerned, we're using a license, which if you're using our software for commercial activity, that's forbidden. For private use, like, you can do it as much as you can, play around, have fun.
I was just interested, what do you mean if you use it for commercial use? If I take the code and I change like 3 lines and I add new 10 lines, what will happen? I mean, can you prove in the court that this is your code or not? I mean, sorry, I'm just interested because I always had that question in my mind.
You can prove it in court. So basically, you'd have an expert opinion, on this, whether and these cases can get long and drawn out, like the Java versus Oracle versus Google thing, which took like 10 years to resolve. But like, the assumption is by default that such a minority of people are even going to try to steal your product, because the majority of the value of our business comes from our business connections, from our partners, from our licensing networks, etc. That the software itself, when you boil it down to it, the software itself is just another tool in the network that we're building. And beyond that, blockchain gives us this cool advantage there, that once our smart contracts are deployed, they're the only ones which are considered valid. So if we are trading on a smart contract the shares of solar power plants and wind power plants, yeah, you can deploy your own, but good luck with that, because you have a secondary market. Maybe you'll get some users, most likely not. So we don't see it as a big threat to our business model. But yeah, if it came down to it, somebody modifying it, the license as it is does not allow modification, sub-derivations, and everything. But yeah.
Maybe I can just add a word, like on a slightly different response to the question. I could say that we take a much more practical approach than a purist approach. So we have parts of our system that are proprietary, and we have parts of our system that are open, and we expect to be open. And I think we'll probably over time move more and more to be open. But I think there are valid reasons for why you keep things closed, especially in early stages. You're still trying to understand your own tech and understand the direction it's going often in many times. So we have IP that we've protected, but again, when you protect it, you're disclosing it to the world also. And so it's I don't think it's like a one-size-fits-all answer. It's super business-specific, and it has to do with exactly how you can monetize. And to, like you said previously, finding a revenue model that works oftentimes needs to take precedence over philosophical underpinnings maybe in a short term. You're building towards a future, but you might need to take a step in the interim time that gets you there. So.
If I may add something, we have seen lots of cases and examples of companies that are fully open sourced and still do business and make revenue. And I think in the case of open source blockchain projects, the biggest value of the project itself is the user base. So as Mislav said, when you deploy your contract and you gather some user base around it, then this is your value proposition of your project, and you don't have to worry about being open source and somebody stealing your code or trying to replicate your project.
I would just like to sort of understand, like, between different businesses and this particular technology, if you're all different entities operating by your own right, at what point do you interact or come to a point of working together on the front end rather than on the sort of back end side of things?
Can you explain a bit or?
Clarify maybe the question.
So what blockchain is meant to be decentralized as a technology, and as business owners or whatever the situation may be, you're all separate entities. On the front end, not on the blockchain technology back-end exchange, etc., but on the front end as businesses, is there a point where you come together, or is there any interoperability between each other in regards to how you work and how you come to general conclusions? So decentralized governance.
If I got this correctly, you're wondering about how do we cooperate, but basically do we combine like our front-end websites as, you know, partnerships listed or stuff like that? Because basically I think on blockchain part we do collaborate. With AMPnet launched, when the trading starts going, you will be able to build auxiliary services running on the platform. So nothing prevents you from building like a depository smart contract, which will take our tokens and then build your product around this. Maybe issue a backed coin or something like that. So on that regard, we work. But on front end, I'm not sure I follow.
I don't know if maybe I'll be able to answer. I think you're asking more about the end user who is using our solutions, right? And how do they interact across the different businesses, right? So I guess I think, like for me and Utu, I'd say they have a right. Jason, he's Utu. So me and Jason, he has a ride sharing application, ride hailing, and what I'm doing is they're about to launch a pilot for the motorcycle taxi, and my solution is emergency response. And so for their riders, I'll be providing emergency response. I'll be like the SOS button on their riders application. So that's already one way we're working together. Their customers will be using both our platforms under one application, if that's what you're talking about. I don't know how we would connect all of us because we all are in different spheres, but we also have an incentive program under RideSafe as well, where these riders, if you go a long period of time without getting accidents, you are incentivized with token. And he's running an exchange. So I'm assuming his exchange could be the one that these riders can easily change their tokens into fiat. So that's one way we're working together with him. And I think many other solutions. So there is a way our end users can actually interact with the different services.
Yeah. I would just add that I think this has actually been one of the really beautiful things about the whole Eternity ecosystem is the number of other entrepreneurs and companies that you're connected to, and that we've been able to now find clientele in. Benson and I's companies are working together. Mislav and I are trying to work on some project together. We're working together with Milen on something as well. And there's so many problems to be solved and layers to be built to make this a mature ecosystem that when you get together a group of companies like this, it's inevitable that you find overlaps between you and you start to build relationships and trust, and you're ending up building on each other's solutions and like, yes, and this, and I think that's actually one of the keys. So I think Eternity for bringing together like the right combination of groups, because I don't think that happens by accident. I think that to some extent is a deliberate look at, okay, what does the ecosystem need and which companies can we put into the portfolio that fill these gaps and that can leverage each other. We don't have 5 of the same guys or 6 guys doing totally irrelevant things, but how do we find people that overlap? So I think that's been a huge value here.
Yeah, of course, it's one of the criteria, synergy in the ecosystem. So let's have a last question. Just quickly, I'd like everybody of you to share what's your vision of developing the blockchain space and the businesses that are using blockchain. You said that it will be just as another technological tool somewhere in the stack, but still the ecosystem of companies that are using blockchain is developing in some way. So just in 2-3 sentences, each of you, what's your vision for the industry based on blockchain?
I think awareness is going to grow, and at one point you can't hide the blockchain forever. It will take over and come up front. It's like when computers came to place, and I know many people did not want to interact with them. It was mainly for accountants and lawyers and things like this. But right now, everyone has a laptop in their house, you see. So I feel it's going to be the same with blockchain, but I think what's going to move really fast is the cryptocurrencies. There will be more adoption in this sphere, and then for other use cases, this will come in slowly, and still, I think people will run for the benefits rather than the blockchain itself.
My biggest thing I see is decentralized finance. So the entire DeFi movement, which is starting to go on. For me, it was the most interesting part from the beginning, since like a couple of years ago, the decentralized lending markets, decentralized credit markets, you know, whatever you may think of. I think like Utu ties in really nicely with that, and yeah, I think that's gonna be the big step we take like in next 2 or 3 years.
For me, cryptocurrencies are probably the smartest money invented ever. So I think there will be some really big movement in user adoption in the next few years. And from technological perspective, blockchain is a trust layer for me that people will need to like understand and ask for in services.
Yeah, probably now DeFi and cryptocurrencies will drive the adoption. But in long term, I think that blockchain could help us to make one better internet with building payments, with trustless data sharing, with much more privacy in mind. And yeah, this is the future, but it will take time for sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest promise that I'm excited about is taking back control or reclaiming ownership of our data as a people at mass scale. And I think the business models that are enabled to do that are what will drive that change, rather than any like humanitarian view on data on the part of like the big existing tech companies. So yeah, free the data.
Okay. Thank you, guys. I think we run out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason, Eisen, Benson, Mugisha, Milen, Radkov, Tito, and Mislav, Javor, and our moderator, Valentin, Alexiev. Thank you.